On this eerie weekday, in the heart of Long Beach, California, one of the most shocking crimes occurred, shaking the entire city. At the center of this tragedy were two sisters, Lily and Hannah Marshall. No one could have predicted that their world would descend into chaos, where intrigue and betrayal would lead to shocking revelations. At the center of this tragedy were two sisters, Lily and Hannah Marshall. Since childhood, they were inseparable, always supporting each other. But behind this perfect picture lay deep secrets and bitter resentments. They lived in a small, quiet house in the suburbs. No one knew that a catastrophe was brewing behind its walls. Their lives seemed perfect on the outside, successful, beautiful, and confident women. But the dark side of their past began to surface, and soon their lives turned into a nightmare. Lily, the older sister, had always been strong and ambitious, managing a small chain of successful cafes in the city center. Hannah, the younger one, was softer in nature, involved in art, and often retreated into herself. Their childhood had been difficult. Their father was a strict and cruel man who never spared them and often resorted to physical violence. Their mother left them when Hannah was only 5 years old. This event deeply affected both sisters and forever changed their perception of family. But despite their difficult past, they always supported each other until that day. On that fateful day, a terrible truth invaded their home. Lily began to suspect that Hannah was leading a double life. There were strange phone calls, secret meetings, and money disappearing from their joint account. Lily decided to investigate and uncovered a truth she could never have imagined. It all started with the disappearance of one of the sisters. Hannah suddenly vanished without a trace, leaving no messages or clues behind. Lily was terrified, but soon began to suspect that Hannah had been hiding something terrible. She found strange notes and photographs that she couldn't explain. Lily, determined to find her sister, started her own investigation. She went through all of Hannah's old belongings, checked her phone records, diaries, and emails. Gradually, a picture began to emerge that she could never have expected. Hannah was involved with dangerous people from the criminal underworld. Lily couldn't believe that her younger, quiet, and introverted sister had been leading such a double life. It turned out that a few months ago, Hannah started interacting with a man named Jackson Rivera, a powerful crime boss who ran a network of underground casinos and was involved in money laundering. Hannah was captivated by his charisma, wealth, and promises of an exciting new life. At first, she didn't realize what she was getting into, but soon she found herself unable to escape the game. Lily was shocked but decided to confront this Jackson. She had no idea what she was up against, but she was certain of one thing: her sister was in danger, and only she could save her. Lily tracked down the address of one of the clubs where Jackson operated and headed there. When they met, Jackson was polite and charming, but behind his smile lurked a threat. He hinted to Lily that her sister owed him a large sum of money and now had to work off her debt. Lily realized that Hannah was trapped and getting her out wouldn't be easy. But the most terrifying part was that Jackson implied Hannah was more than just a debtor. She had become part of his criminal organization and knew too much to simply be let go. The deeper Lily dug, the more horrifying details came to light. It turned out that Hannah had been involved in a web of criminal operations, laundering money through fake art exhibitions, reselling stolen paintings, and running sham auctions. She had long been a part of a world Lily never even imagined. Meanwhile, Lily began receiving threats. One evening, someone left a note on her doorstep: "Stay out of things that don't concern you." She started to realize that her own life was now in danger. Jackson and his people were watching her every move, and each step she took closer to finding Hannah only drew her further into something far more dangerous. But Lily couldn't stop. She knew she had to find her sister before it was too late. In her search for help, she turned to an old family friend, Detective Richard Grayson. He had retired long ago, but after her father's death, he had always stayed close to the family. Upon hearing about Hannah's situation, Richard agreed to help, but he warned Lily that this path was dangerous and that sometimes it's better not to know the truth. The detective and Lily began monitoring Jackson's people. They uncovered suspicious transactions, tracked meeting locations, and soon discovered a warehouse in the industrial zone of the city where they believed illegal activities were taking place. Lily was certain her sister was there. They devised a plan to break into the warehouse and find Hannah. But what they didn't anticipate was that this night would become their worst nightmare. The night at the warehouse turned out to be a turning point for Lily. Her heart pounded wildly as she and Detective Richard Grayson sneaked onto the property. Silence enveloped them, with only the sound of cars outside reminding them they were still in the city. But inside, everything seemed eerily calm, almost as if waiting for something ominous. They slipped through the back entrance, hiding in the shadows. Lily walked confidently ahead, feeling that her sister was nearby. However, when they reached one of the large rooms, an unexpected sight awaited them. Hannah was sitting at a table, surrounded by Jackson's men, and she looked strangely calm. Lily barely restrained herself from rushing in and grabbing her sister. But Richard stopped her, whispering to wait. They watched as Hannah calmly signed some documents. She didn't seem like a victim of this criminal world, but rather a player. Then Hannah glanced up, her eyes locking with Lily's, and for a brief moment, her face contorted a mix of fear and pain from realizing she had been found. But she quickly masked her emotions, putting on a facade of calm once again. That's when Lily understood. Her sister wasn't just a hostage, she was now one of them. It was a staggering revelation. Everything Lily thought she knew about her sister seemed like a lie. Hannah was deeply immersed in the criminal world, and now Lily couldn't be sure who she really was. But there was no time for reflection. One of the guards noticed movement near the door, and panic erupted. Lily and Richard were forced to storm into the room. A fight broke out. Richard tried to distract the guards, while Lily rushed to Hannah to pull her out. But Hannah didn't move. She stood there in shock, unable to believe that her sister had risked her life for her. Lily grabbed her hand, trying to drag her away, but Hannah, as if in a daze, resisted. She looked at Lily with eyes full of confusion and pain. "Why did you come?" she whispered as gunshots echoed around them. At that moment, Lily realized that Hannah had already made her choice. She was no longer the little sister who needed saving. She was part of this dark and dangerous game, and maybe she even liked it. Meanwhile, Richard had taken down one of the guards, but Jackson's men were already converging on the warehouse. They had to get out quickly. In desperation, Lily tried to pull Hannah along, but she, as if hypnotized, remained frozen in place. Then something unexpected happened. Jackson entered the room, holding a gun. He smiled coldly and aimed it directly at Lily. "Do you really think you can save her? Hannah hasn't been the person you knew for a long time," he said. At that moment, Lily realized she was on the brink of life and death. She saw Hannah take a step back, unable to say anything, while Richard prepared for a final strike. A confrontation seemed inevitable. Jackson began to approach, but at that moment, a shot rang out. It was Richard. He fired first, and Jackson fell to the floor. Panic spread throughout the warehouse. The guards scattered, but Lily and Richard managed to escape into the dark corridors, dragging Hannah with them. Their escape was desperate, but successful. They made it outside, finally catching their breath on the street. But Hannah was no longer the girl Lily once knew. She had become someone else, and that person was a stranger to her. Lily, Hannah, and Richard made it out of the warehouse, but the tension lingered. Hannah remained distant, her gaze cold and detached. Lily couldn't understand what was going through her sister's mind. Was she still a hostage to this world, or had she fully embraced her new role? They headed to a safe place, Richard's old house outside the city, where they could hide for a while and figure out their next steps. Along the way, Lily tried to talk to her sister. "Why did you do it? Why did you get involved in all of this?" Her voice trembled with a mix of pain and anger. But Hannah stayed silent, staring tiredly out the window. Finally, when they reached the safe house, Hannah spoke unexpectedly. "You don't understand anything, Lily. I tried to get out, but it was impossible. Jackson, he controlled everything. And if I left, he would have destroyed me. And you too." These words shocked Lily. She couldn't believe that Hannah had hidden her suffering for so long without asking for help. Lily suddenly realized that her sister was indeed a prisoner of this world, but had sunk so deep that she couldn't find a way out. Meanwhile, Richard began studying the papers they had managed to take from the warehouse. He realized that Jackson was only part of a much larger organization. The people he was working with were connected to an international smuggling network that involved not only money and art but also human trafficking. That warehouse was just one stop along their route. "We need to run," Richard said. "We're not safe here. Jackson might be dead, but his people will come looking for us. We need to get out of the city." But before they could take any action, an unexpected visitor appeared at Richard's doorstep. It was Jonathan Gray, an old acquaintance of Richard's who had once worked with him in the police. His arrival was no coincidence. He had been following them the entire time. "You're in danger," he said bluntly. "Jackson's people are already on their way here. You don't have much time." The situation was heating up. Lily felt like time was running out, and it became clear that Hannah knew much more than she was letting on. But why was she staying silent? What exactly was she hiding? Jonathan offered a plan. "We can use the information you have to make a deal with the authorities. I can help you get to the people behind Jackson. If we can expose this network, they'll leave you alone." But Lily wasn't sure if she could trust him. His sudden appearance was too suspicious, and she felt that there was more to his offer than he was revealing. Meanwhile, Hannah, who had been quiet for a long time, suddenly spoke up. "We can't trust anyone. In this world, everyone is playing their own game. If I tell everything I know, they'll kill us. We need to find our own way out." These words only added fuel to the fire. Lily, torn between the desire to protect her sister and uncover the truth, realized that everything was getting even more complicated. The situation was growing more intense by the minute. Lily looked at Hannah, feeling that her sister was trapped even deeper than she had imagined. Their decision to leave the house seemed like their only chance to survive, but Lily sensed that Hannah was hiding something, and this might be their last chance to change everything. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Richard were discussing their next steps. The question was whether to use the information they had gathered to strike a deal with the authorities or try to hide on their own. Lily decided to step in. "What do we do?" "We need to make a decision now, before it's too late," Lily said, trying to keep her composure. Hannah finally looked her straight in the eyes. "I know what to do," she said quietly, her voice full of determination. "I can lead you to the people behind Jackson. But you need to trust me, and we're almost out of time." This admission was shocking. Lily couldn't believe that her sister was so deeply involved in the criminal world that she knew the people pulling the strings behind Jackson. But they had no choice. Danger was too close, and risking any further was pointless. They decided to follow Hannah's plan. Jonathan and Richard were to distract Jackson's men, who were already on their way to the house, while Lily and Hannah were to reach an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, where, according to Hannah, the key figures of the entire criminal network were located. When they arrived at the warehouse, Lily realized that this was where everything would be decided. Several people were already waiting there, and it was clear they knew Hannah. These were the criminal leaders she had been dealing with behind Jackson's back. "You brought them here?" One of the men approached Hannah, but his voice showed neither fear nor surprise. He already knew what had happened. "They know everything," Hannah said, her voice steady. "I'm not playing this game anymore." Lily froze, watching her sister negotiate with these dangerous men. She realized that Hannah had planned this all along. She wasn't just a victim, she had used the situation to eliminate Jackson and take control of everything. But suddenly, things spiraled out of control. One of the crime leaders pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at Hannah. "You think we'll trust you? Once you spill everything, you'll be of no use." Lily felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. She realized that this could be their final moment. But Hannah was ready for anything. In a split second, she pulled a recorder out of her bag, which had been recording the entire conversation. "If you kill us, this tape goes straight to the police and it's over for you," she said calmly. The men froze, realizing they had walked into a trap. This was a game of survival, and Hannah knew how to play it. At that moment, Lily realized that her sister was no longer the naive girl she had always protected. Hannah had become someone else, someone who now controlled everything around her. But suddenly, police sirens blared in the distance. This was Richard and Jonathan's move. While Hannah negotiated, they had managed to alert the authorities, and the warehouse was now surrounded. The criminal leaders were captured, and their empire began to crumble. However, before the police could enter, one of the criminals grabbed a weapon, and a brief shootout ensued. Lily and Hannah dashed toward the exit, but one of the bullets grazed Hannah, and she fell to the floor. In a panic, Lily rushed to her sister, trying to lift her up, but chaos reigned around them. The police finally stormed into the building, apprehending the remaining criminals. Supporting the wounded Hannah, Lily helped her outside. When they finally made it into the open air, exhausted and worn out, Lily looked at her sister, who could barely stand. "We did it," Lily whispered, holding back tears. But Hannah, giving a tired smile, replied, "I've lost too much. I'm not sure if this is a victory." The end seemed liberating. Lily and Hannah managed to escape the nightmare alive, but their relationship was forever changed. Lily no longer saw in Hannah the sister she once knew. Now Hannah was a different person, someone who had learned how to play the survival game. After the warehouse incident, Hannah was immediately taken to the hospital. Her injury was not fatal, but it was still serious. Lily stayed by her sister's side in the hospital room, feeling her world collapse once again. Hannah, wrapped in bandages and with a tired expression, finally began to speak. "I never wanted you to find out," she whispered. "You were supposed to live your life, never knowing what I had to go through." Lily was stunned by these words. "Why didn't you come to me? I would have helped you, done whatever I could. I was already too deep in this world. I couldn't risk you. Jackson and his people were ready to destroy you if you had interfered in any way." These words made Lily realize just how desperate her sister's situation had been. Despite all her mistakes and the tangled mess of her life, Hannah had still tried to protect her, even at the cost of her own well-being. Weeks passed. Hannah recovered, but their relationship was no longer the same. Lily continued working at her cafe, but her thoughts constantly drifted back to what had happened. Neither of them discussed the future, as if both were avoiding the topic. One day, however, an unexpected visitor appeared at Lily's cafe, Detective Richard Grayson. His face was serious, and from the moment he sat down across from her, Lily knew that the news he brought wouldn't be good. "Lily," he began, sitting at the table, "there's something you need to know." "What are you talking about, Richard?" Lily asked, trying to suppress her anxiety. "Hannah, she's involved again. I received information that she's renewed her ties with Jackson's people, even after everything that happened." Lily couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her sister, who swore it was all behind her, was sinking back into that dangerous world. Why? Her heart pounded in her chest. "This can't be true," she whispered, but deep down she already knew the answer. "Lily," Richard's voice was firm, "you need to prepare for the worst. If Hannah is mixed up in this again, the consequences could be fatal." Lily was in shock. She couldn't believe that after everything they'd been through, Hannah had returned to her dangerous life. Thoughts raced through her mind. How could this have happened? They were so close to escaping all of it. Lily decided to confront her sister in person and find out the truth. That same evening, she headed to the house where Hannah was staying after being discharged from the hospital. Hannah met her at the door, her face calm, but there was worry in her eyes. "We need to talk," Lily said firmly as she walked inside. "I heard you're back in touch with Jackson's people. Why, Hannah? Why are you going back to this?" Hannah sighed heavily and sat down on the couch without looking at Lily. "You don't understand anything, Lily." Her voice was dull and tired. "I can't just walk away. They know too much about me. Yes, Jackson is dead, but his people, they're still out there. They're watching my every move, and if I make one wrong step, they'll destroy not only me but you too." Lily couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But we could have run away. We could have started fresh. Why didn't you let me help?" Hannah gave a bitter smile. "It's not that simple. I'm in too deep. Even if I wanted to leave, they would find me. We'll never be safe as long as they're alive." A heavy silence filled the room, but it was broken by a loud knock at the door. Lily and Hannah turned to look at it simultaneously. A cold sweat ran down Lily's back. "Are you expecting someone?" Lily whispered, her heart racing. Hannah shook her head, her face pale. Lily slowly approached the door, her hands trembling. As she opened it, she came face to face with a stranger whose face was hidden beneath a hood. "Time's up," he said, and before Lily could react, the stranger shoved her aside and stepped inside. Hannah jumped up from the couch, her eyes filled with terror. The stranger pulled out a gun and pointed it at her. "You thought you could escape this?" he growled. "Jackson's dead, but you still owe us." Lily threw herself between them, shielding her sister with her body. "Leave her alone. This is between you and her. Don't drag her into it," Lily shouted, trying to protect Hannah. The stranger sneered. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." At that moment, the door burst open again, and Detective Richard and his team stormed into the house. A brief but intense shootout ensued, during which the stranger was subdued. Richard approached Lily, who was still standing, protecting Hannah. "Are you all right?" he asked, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Lily, breathing heavily, nodded. "I thought I was going to lose her forever." But Hannah was no longer the sister she once was. She looked at Lily with bitterness and sadness in her eyes. "You saved me, Lily, but now you need to save yourself," she whispered. Lily realized that Hannah would never be able to return to a normal life. After the dramatic confrontation at the house, the situation slowly began to calm down. Thanks to the intervention of Detective Richard and his team, Lily and Hannah found themselves in a safe place. However, even though the immediate threat had been eliminated, Lily couldn't find peace. Inside, her emotions churned. Fear for the future, the bitterness of losing someone close, and the realization that their lives would never be the same again. Hannah, though she survived, had lost not only her freedom but a part of herself. She remained silent most of the time, avoiding any conversations with Lily. The inner wounds she carried were too deep to heal in just a few days. Meanwhile, Detective Richard continued the investigation, trying to uncover the entire network behind Jackson. The information gathered during the conflict helped expose connections between criminal elements, but the main figure behind the operation had still not been found. Lily understood that as long as this person remained at large, their lives would never be truly safe. A few days later, Lily made a decision. They couldn't hide forever. She suggested to Hannah that they leave the country, start a new life somewhere far away where no one could find them. But to Lily's surprise, Hannah refused. "I can't run forever," Hannah quietly said, sitting by the window and looking at the horizon. "I have to finish what I started." Those words hit like a blow. Lily couldn't believe that her sister wanted to return to that dark world once again. But Hannah was resolute. Her soul was too deeply tied to what was happening around her, and she had decided to face the danger head-on. "You don't have to do this," Lily said, her voice full of despair. "You can start over. We can leave and forget all of this." Hannah shook her head. "I'm in too deep. If I leave, they'll come for me and for you. I can't afford that luxury. I need to end this once and for all." Richard, overhearing their conversation, proposed a plan. "If we want to keep Hannah and you, Lily, safe, we need to expose everyone involved in this operation. We'll use Hannah as bait to get to the real leader." Lily was horrified by the idea. She knew Richard's plan was dangerous, but it seemed that there was no other way. They devised a strategy in which Hannah would meet with the remaining members of Jackson's network under the guise of offering a deal. In reality, Richard and his team would be watching her every move, ready to step in and put an end to the entire operation. The day of the meeting arrived. Lily watched from a distance, her heart racing. Despite her outward confidence, Hannah was tense. She knew that if the plan failed, there would be no way out for her. Hannah entered the abandoned warehouse where two men, whom she had seen with Jackson before, were already waiting for her. They exchanged nervous glances as she began to speak. "I want to make a deal," Hannah said calmly. "I know Jackson is dead, and now you're in charge of the entire operation. But if you want to keep things running, you'll have to work through me." The men looked at her suspiciously. One of them spoke up. "You think we'll trust you? As soon as we make a deal, you'll be the next one on the hit list." But Hannah didn't flinch. "If you kill me, all the information I've gathered will go straight to the police. You'll lose everything." At that moment, Lily, watching everything through the camera, realized that their plan was starting to unfold. But something went wrong. One of the men suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it at Hannah. Just before he could pull the trigger, Richard's team burst into the room. A fierce shootout erupted. Lily, who was nearby, screamed when she saw Hannah dive for cover. In the chaos that engulfed the warehouse, Richard and his team were able to neutralize the criminals, but Hannah was seriously wounded. Lily rushed to her, her hands trembling as she held her sister. "We did it," Hannah whispered, her voice weak. "Now they can't hurt us anymore." Lily, crying, hugged her sister, realizing that this victory was bittersweet. Their lives would never be the same again, but now they were free.